Hello, today we're going to be discussing director Errol Morris's work. Errol Morris, The Passive Instigator. I think we're rudderless bumblers. Regardless of what we might imagine, you can think of my films as cautionary tales, but you might even think of them as despairing tales, because at least in a cautionary tale, you have this idea that by listening to the story, you can assure a better outcome. Whereas I'm not at all convinced that's the case. In fact, if anything, I'm convinced that it's the opposite. End quote. Errol Morris for James Hughes at Stop Smiling magazine in March 2006. The films that I've seen by Errol Morris included Vernon, Florida, Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, Gates of Heaven. What life experiences of Errol Morris's have shaped his subsequent impact on his work? The Morris film candidates seem to fall within two distinct categories: the single-person piece and the multi-interview piece. His editing styles vary with use of the amount of stock footage, and Morris's editing varies from intentional juxtapositions that highlight irony to loose associations based on tacit association. During the course of the paper, I will also explore the methods Morris has used over the years to get his interviews. The only possible thing more fascinating than an Errol Morris film would have to be Errol Morris himself, and luckily he has a vast official website, which is full of information. On the web itself, there are many reviews about his films, but after reading many of them, I was certain they all contained the same concepts and words, just in a different order. Errol Morris is 58, lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and houses his massive collection of files at his office, a converted department store. A native of Wisconsin, where he graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison, he attended San Francisco Art Institute, University of California at Berkeley, and Princeton University for degrees in philosophy. He is married to art historian Julia Sheehan. Together they have a son. While working on his dissertation concerning the rationale of serial killers, an interest which grew out of his love of the movie Psycho and the real-life Wisconsin case the movie was based on, he began enjoying interviewing murderers on audio tape and transcribing the interviews onto paper. Soon, he began hiring small film crews to conduct his interviews, and because the maximum amount of 16 or 35 millimeter film took 11 minutes to be used up, that was the initial limit of each sitting before shooting would have to pause for the cameras to be reloaded. With the advent of video cameras, his interview style changed, but always he intended to get the most information for the fewest questions asked. According to Morris, interviewed by Hughes, 2006. Vernon, Florida, Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, and Gates of Heaven are all Morris films which incorporate multiple people being interviewed. That is where the similarities stop. Gates of Heaven was Morris's first film in 1978, and his teacher, Werner Herzog, said he would eat his own shoe if it was completed. Herzog followed through on his promise, was filmed boiling the shoe and being interviewed as he ate it. Gates of Heaven was inspired by a headline in the San Francisco Chronicle entitled 450 Dead Pets Go to Napa. The movie can still be confusing because Vernon, Florida, was a wonderful way to discover Errol Morris's body of work. I enjoyed the use of natural lighting, which created what Morris calls impressionistic effects. The use of setting in which he interviews take place are crucial within the film. While the film was intended to be a piece about people who sacrifice limbs for insurance fraud, who Morris refers to as nubbies, that idea was scrapped when a nubbie's son beat Morris up. The only time Morris ever faced physical violence. Because of the variety of topics explored and the depth that the participants are willing to pursue their own obsessions, this is my favorite Morris film. I found Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control to be a disappointment, largely due to the overuse of stock footage from older circus movies for no apparent reason. The interviews were set against a drab background, and the subjects were not all equally fascinating. I enjoyed the topiary designer and the mole rat expert, but are theirs are stories not often told, and both of those topics interest me apart from the film. While all subjects were chosen for their obsessive personalities, the outcome of the overall film was that the comfort in being an expert on their chosen subject gave each one the feeling that they were all god of their own narrow domain. The reaching of this conclusion seemed forced and then unnecessarily repetitive. However, it is one of Errol Morris's most acclaimed works, having won Best Documentary Film from the National Board of Review, the National Society of Film Critics, and the Independent Spirit Award, as well as being a featured part of the 2000 biennial for the Whitney Museum. Errol Morris has produced everything from advertisements to television shows to films, and won almost every highly esteemed academic grant available to him. In his desire to reach a larger audience, Morris's work has changed dramatically over time. When he first began filmmaking, the independent film market was much smaller than it is now. Morris helped to establish this larger market by gaining critical acclaim. He also helped to redefine the fundamentals of the documentary film genre. Although Errol Morris's techniques, such as his use of the Interatron monitor, which shows his face as he's asking his interview questions to get his subjects to look directly into the camera, are often mentioned in articles about him. It was his work prior to his use of the endless videotape cameras, or the Interatron, that is the true proof of Morris's artistry. I prefer the low-tech Errol Morris. The sources for this paper incorporate both print and web sources utilized through the Art of Documentary Film course. Thank you very much for listening to Errol Morris, the Passive Instigator paper. I think a brief amount of that was had to be skipped over because it's no longer extant with the paper, but thank you so much for tuning in with me and listening. I really appreciate it. Let me know your feelings about Errol Morris's films, and which one's your favorite in the comments below. That would be awesome. And please, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing to these videos. I really appreciate it. It's awfully kind of you to tune in. Have a great day. Thank you.